We're headed into the garden. We are going to do a full walkthrough. We're gonna go into the greenhouse, show you what we have growing. I've got some iced coffee. It's a beautiful day. Let's head in. Our tour is going to start right here. We have 10 raised beds behind me, and I would like to get something off my chest. I hurt my finger yesterday, so I drew a little flower. Clearly you can see art is not my strong point, but I assure you what's under there is far more unsightly. So this first row is celery, Brussels sprouts, we've got fennel, kale, and some more fennel. I actually want to plant more next year because we absolutely love fennel. I also have celeriac right next to the celery. Eric just informed me that the celery is already starting to be ready to eat, so he has been munching on that. Some of the celeriac is forming bulbs. We had one Brussels sprouts plant that was flowering, so I picked the flower off. I've never had that happen before. You know, we want all that energy to be put into the sprouts themselves, and those are a really long crop, so we start them early and they go really late into the season. The kale's looking awesome this year. We have a bunch of different varieties. I love to have different colors in here. I have a plan to consume a lot of these for like a canned recipe down the road. We've got flowers on the end of most of the beds. This is where our leeks, onions, and shallots are. Those are also doing really great. They're off to a good start. I fertilize those a lot with nitrogen, especially early on. The green onions are the first to be ready. That's what we've been harvesting from so far. And there's a few oryx in here. I absolutely love the green color, and I have a hard time finding that seed. So these are plants that were self-sown from the plants from the previous year. You know, they dropped their seed and they sprouted up this spring, and we try to keep this weed free, but we did decide to leave those because they're so beautiful. I'm not quite sure how many are in here, but it's definitely a couple hundred. We love our onions, and we always start them from seed. The mustards are about done for the year. We had a great season with them. We harvested a lot. We've let them bolt now. The bees love the flowers. I thought it was going to be my year to say that I finally grew a Napa cabbage after like 8 years, and it was doing so strong. We had some shade cloth on here, but I found that they weren't getting enough circulation just about a week ago, and I noticed 3 of them were rotting. So I pulled those out, and those guys are definitely not appreciating the warm weather we've been having. Probably won't stop me from trying it again though. We've got 2 different additional colors of oric over here. One's a very beautiful dark purple, and the other is more of a magenta shade. Last time I showed this plant, we hadn't tried it, and we have harvested a bunch of it. So it is called komatsuna, I think. And it's kind of like a spinach mustard, but it's delicious. It is a perennial, I think, and I don't know if it's bolting yet. It may bolt eventually because of our daylight, but it's really just delicate. It tastes like your standard green. It really does not have any mustard flavor to it. We love our lettuce, so we have loose leaf, we have romaines, we have butterheads, and iceberg. I have a red variety. I'm really excited about that. They take a little while to actually like fill out. And this is buckley. This is a new kind from Territorial, and it's super cool. It has it looks like a oak leaf. I'm just gonna grab one. We've yet to harvest any of these, but they're definitely ready. It's just super cool leaf. We have some French sorrel at the end. This was started from seed, but it does overwinter, and it is very sour, just like if you've ever tried clover. Real lemony, sour tasting. Doesn't hit you at first. Yeah, it doesn't hold up to cooking very well. It turns brown, but it is very nice to add to salads. We've got a whole row for the cabbage. The leaves are huge this year. I'm not sure if it's the compost that we added to this bed, but it just seems really big and robust in here. We have a surprise plant. It is a broccoli. I usually am really good at telling our plants when they're little, but I missed that one. So he's mixed in with the cabbage. Lots of different color, lots of different texture. We've got some of the Savoy type, and then we also have cabbages that form like a cylindrical head. The OS cross cabbages are at the end. It looks like this one's gonna be the superstar for the year. That is a nice young kohlrabi. We usually let them get a little bigger than that. We give the greens to the chickens, and this is Delicacy White. This is an awesome kohlrabi to try if you haven't grown them before. I highly recommend it. They taste not like jicama, but like a broccoli stem, but they're kind of that same texture, super crunchy when raw, and they're just crazy easy to grow, especially this variety. We've got collards, variety of Swiss chard. I'm a sucker for colors, but the one that grows best in Alaska without bolting is this Ford Hook Giant. It's got the whitish green stalk with a really big leaf. More lettuce. We have a few endives. And moving on to herbs, we have fenugreek here. First time growing this. I thought the seeds smelled divine, but if you know how to use this in cooking, please feel free to let me know, because I don't have much experience with it. We just used some of the leaves the other day and it didn't actually have too much of a flavor. I think the seeds is where it's really at. They smell so good. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm really excited to try them when they go to seed. We also have thyme, some marjoram, and oregano, and 2 different kinds of parsley in here. This is our 2 potato rows. Everything is very leafed out. They look great. And we only held up the indeterminate varieties. Usually we just give them all extra dirt, but these beds really can't fit much more. They are putting off flowers, and potatoes are very simple, but they are a high fertilizer plant, so they appreciate a lot of compost and fertilizer. I make sure to also water them a lot throughout the growing season. Definitely recommend trying them. If you haven't grown them, they're super fun to dig up at the end of the year and see what kind of treasures you have under the soil. There's about 50 seed potatoes in these 2 beds and a lot of different varieties. We have an entire bed dedicated to cauliflower and broccoli this year. I'm very excited about that. All sorts of different colors and varieties. We also have Veronica cauliflower in here. It looks like that's doing pretty well. It's like got these little spirals in it. So far this bed, they're growing exactly how I want to see. So they're getting pretty big, and I imagine that we're going to have some nice size heads on these plants. I did plant some flowers in between these when they were smaller. I wasn't anticipating they would get this big. As a whole, we do kind of cramp our garden, so these plants are very, you know, stacked in these beds. And when it's really warm, you can tell that they're competing for the water, their roots in there. We've had 2 pretty long heat waves here. We just came out of one, and it's pretty nice today too. It's in the 70s. When the sun's on these plants all day long, you'll start to see like the southern end or that corner will actually wilt just a little bit. And as the sun starts to go away, it will recover, but I will also get in here if I can and I'm home and do quite a bit of watering. The garlic was a miss this year, which is a little bit sad because this is year 2 for us. So we were able to grow it pretty decently back at our old place, but here it's just been really hard to overwinter it. This is all hardneck garlic. We planted hundreds, maybe even more than that in the fall. You want to get the timing just right, and then they pop up in the spring. Unfortunately, ours failed to pop up, or at least the majority of them did. So we have a lot of them that popped up right on the edges of the bed that warmed up first. And the ones in the middle, it just seems like they rotted before they got a chance to get growing. We do deeply mulch them in the fall, and I take all of that off in the spring. Another option for us is to actually grow this garlic just annually and not overwinter it. So what we will have to do is start our bulbs in the spring, get them to root out, and transplant them into the soil when it's ready, and then we'll harvest it later in the year. We're not going to get as big of garlic, and I've never actually done it that way, so I'll have to let you know how it goes. But this way that we've been trying it is just not working for us. It's expensive, and we absolutely love garlic. It's like one of my top 3 crops. The stuff at the store is just no good. Super sad. This is also a garlic bed, and you can see it's not filled out. Got little, oh my God, got some little flowers that we threw in last minute. This is our rutabaga, turnips, and burdock. I've never grown that, so we're trying that for the first time. Got some flowers. This is a seed that is from Scandinavia. It is so good. It's kind of a mix between rutabaga and turnip, but it's got this like lovely creamy ivory color. And this one's absolutely beautiful. That's just what they look like, short and kind of plump. The fruit trees are a work in progress. We have 6 different apple trees. We've got some crab apple trees on the back. Those seem to be doing a little bit better. This one right here, in fact, all of them, I took pretty good care of them in the winter, and I thought that all of this wood, or like the stalk, the trunk was alive, but it looks like it wasn't. And I realized when I kind of like flipped the hose one day and it snapped some of the branches. But it's pretty obvious that the trees are alive because they're sending out just an abundance of growth. You know, not necessarily below the graft or anything, it's above the graft, and it's kind of bushing out. They're all doing this. Fruit trees are just kind of hard up here, so we're trying to see if this is going to be something that will pay off in a few years. These trees are actually kind of in the ground. You know, we made sure there was a lot of soil and compost in there. And we have this little pit in the middle where the water collects, when I'm watering, and that way, we assure that the roots get enough water throughout the season. I've been fertilizing them, making sure the weeds are pulled, and just trying overall to take really good care of them. Our horseradish plant is kicking it. Hopefully we can harvest from that in another year or so. Along the northeast back wall of the garden, we have 5 raised beds and or little planters. And we kind of have that carry throughout the garden. I do try to plant flowers in here, but I also have some herbs and I sometimes have some perennials. There's not actually that many plants here that will perennialize. I have some tarragon over there, but I overwintered that indoors in our seed room. We've got lovage here and I haven't been able to get that to perennialize yet. The comfrey does fantastic, so that's able to overwinter no problem. It's super hardy. It's actually like a 6-year-old plant. The bees absolutely love it. I also had like a little cornflower in here, but he did not make it. That was a gift, so there's a little bit of a hole over there. We are in zone 1 up here, and when you're overwintering plants, it is better to have them in the ground, protected, and then also protected with snow or mulch. But where we're at, there's a lot of gravel, and we only have like 6 to 8 inches of soil above the gravel base, so it really doesn't give a lot of room for plants' roots. So a lot of what we have is raised beds, and that does decrease the likelihood that they will be able to survive the harsh winters. More flowers along this wall. We've got creeping thyme right here. Only 1 out of about 20 of those plants survive. Very interesting. And we have some livingstone daisies that have yet to flower. We've got catnip, yarrow, daisies, cosmos. We have some coriander in here, so that actually flowers and sets that beautiful little seed. That's some of the perennialized French sorrel. Honeywort, that is an all-time favorite of mine. The bees love it as well. Borage, strawflower, mullein, salvia, a whole bunch of stuff. I did forget to mention I have some cat mint on that back side. That's the first time for me growing that. I purchased a plant and I think it's so beautiful. It's got this really purple flower. This here is a beautiful grass plant. It used to be a chive plant. It was several years old and we brought it up from an old property to this place, but it didn't overwinter in this bucket, sadly. I do have another chive plant, and that one did survive the winter, but it's still very small. I'm gonna pull it into the seed room this winter, let it get bigger, and then we'll give it a permanent home out here. The mint is off to a marvelous start, and I started almost all of this from seed. So only 2 of them came back. They're right here. I kind of had high hopes for them. I couldn't risk going a year without it, so I made sure to start more, and it looks awesome. It's totally taken off. We've got some cilantro and chamomile and this lovely little wheelbarrow of plants. So I actually had a little lavender in there that I overwintered. I was very excited about that. Planted him and he died when we had a frost in the spring. I find that kind of ironic, but because I stuff everything so full, you really can't even tell now that everything's big. There's some pretty cool mustards growing throughout the garden and I just left them to flower. These germinated from the plants that we grew last year, so we compost everything and those seeds remain viable and they sprouted up in the spring. What radishes are left are flowering now. These cold frames did so well this year for us. There's one that's still kind of going. It has strawberry spinach and some red vein sorrel, but the rest of them are pretty much done for the season. We've switched gears from this cold frame bed that was predominantly mixed lettuces. We were harvesting a bunch from this. That's like our favorite thing to eat when the garden first starts producing, but now we've switched over to the other lettuces, and these are for the chickens. We'll just cut them and give them to them every few days. These 2 new beds are doing phenomenal. So this is carrots, and they have been thinned. There's also some parsnips on the end. Those are doing so-so. It seems like only half of them germinated. It was 2 different varieties, so one variety germinated, the other didn't. And this is turnips and beets, and this bed is off to a great start. So beets aren't something that we usually get to grow that well up here, but I'm thinking that with the warmth that we've had, these are going to do pretty well. They've been thinned, so they have plenty of space to bulb out and grow those roots. Let's see if we can find a turnip. Nice. Okay. These are the turnips we've been eating so far. They are ready earlier in the season. They're from Territorial. Can't remember the name right now, but they're super delicious and it's a new variety for us. We're gonna grab some of the strawberry spinach for the road. I actually didn't know that this plant grows natively here. I've always kind of grown it, but it does grow out in the field as well. It was my first time growing violas and pansies. I started them a very long time ago, but they definitely paid off. They're absolutely gorgeous. They have all these flowers. They're all different colors. They look like tiny little faces. We put them with the peas. This is our snap peas and our snow peas. They took off a little bit later, but you can see they're flowering now and finally setting little pods. This other bed is the shelling peas. These are absolutely delicious. I love peas, and I set these aside in a separate bed in hopes to grow a lot of them and harvest them and blanch them and freeze them, so we will have some for this winter. We've got asparagus. It may not be mighty big, but it's still very exciting. So these, I think, were 1-year-old crowns when we planted them. They were a little bit smaller, and about half of them came back, and I'm going to consider that pretty successful. So they will get bigger and thicker as they get older. Eric and I were actually just in Fairbanks, and we saw some super thick asparagus, which was pretty exciting. I can't wait until ours actually looks like that and we can harvest from it. Bachelor buttons are another favorite, and they're super simple to grow. We also have a whole bed of snapdragons. I didn't know that the bachelor buttons would reseed themselves, so I'm finding that they're popping up everywhere. These little drums just have some more flowers and some of those mustard plants that germinated. Yarrow is tried and true. It comes back because it also grows here natively. So these are different varieties in here, different colors. And I'm gonna keep this bed like this for years to come. Looks like some borage and some catnip have popped up, so those will reseed themselves. The catnip sometimes overwinters, but not that reliably. That is sugar stars, and this is a designated barrel for our rose rugosa. But because it's its first year kind of like growing, I planted a whole bunch of other stuff, and it looks like this barrel in particular got a lot of compost. Everything is super big and green. The raspberries are looking pretty good for year 2, especially this row. This is a certain variety that's cultivated in Fairbanks, and I think it's partly has like the wild raspberry in it. Some of these are plants that we've brought from our old property. Not all of them survived over the winter. I think we have replaced 2. And we also just planted a sucker over here in this missing spot. We've got several different varieties in here, and I have a lot of confidence that these raspberries are going to do well once they get going. They're super hardy. We just need to give them time. This is our little L-shaped perennial section. We had 5 rhubarbs, and rhubarb is notoriously like one of the hardiest plants you can have here in Alaska, yet we somehow managed to kill 2 of them. These are all the same variety, and they have all been started from seed. I think where we maybe went wrong is harvesting from those first year plants over here, whereas these were several years old that we transplanted here, and Eric and I never actually harvested from them the first 2 years. So last year was the first time that we took stalks off of them, and as a whole, I think the plants are a lot bigger and they have a lot more energy, which is really relevant when it comes time to overwintering them, right? The rest of the section is currants, gooseberries, and haskellapes or honeyberries. The honeyberries do really well. A few of these are a little scraggly because they survived a very long ride to be transplanted up here. Some of these are plants that we put in last year, so they look a little bit more filled out. I haven't pruned them or anything, and they have some nice berries already forming on them. We had 5 gooseberries, but I am not sure what happened to all of them. Only 2 of them made a comeback. One, it's kind of hard to say it did because it really only has a few little leaves over here. That's a pretty old plant. This plant over here is going absolutely wild, just like setting off all these vines and branches. I don't know the exact variety of gooseberry that it is, but it's doing well. Whereas these 3 right here didn't make a comeback. And I have the actual plant, so you can see this one had a little bit of vole damage. That's probably the only vole damage Eric and I have ever had in our 5 years gardening up here in Alaska. This is already a really challenging state to garden in, and the perennials can be a little bit tricky, but this was also a really weird winter. You know, we had some warm-ups, then we had a cool spring, and it seems like that is also kind of playing into what plants are coming back or not coming back. We made the decision to replace 2 of them. We just did not think that they were alive, and to be honest, when we pulled them out, they weren't really alive. So we replaced them. We've got 2 new gooseberries here. I'm hoping that these ones will overwinter, and we'll see about the other guys. I don't want to give up hope, but if they don't send out leaves or new growth this year, I find it hard to imagine they will be able to store any energy and actually overwinter to next spring. Currants, no complaints really. There was a little dieback, but as a whole, they sent out a bunch of new shoots. We did have a pretty neat bed of strawberries here that we planted last year, and it was supposed to be a variety that's very, very hardy. I'm not sure why they didn't make a comeback. We kept holding on hope and thinking if we watered them, they were eventually going to, send out some green leaves, but nothing. And we did decide to purchase just a few more of the same variety. So I have 4 of them planted, and then I put a few of the runners in this little pot. I'm hoping to kind of clip those off later and plant them. We were able to get berries off these last year. They were absolutely delicious. They put on so much growth. It's pretty unusual that they didn't make it, but to be honest, I don't know what I'm gonna do this time around to try to ensure that they do make it, because we did mulch and planting in the ground is not really an option for us. Just a quick note on weeds. We just established this garden in the last 2 years. We do use a lot of compost, and we also have a lot of native grasses that try to make their home in here. And Eric and I weren't able to put any sort of liner down when we first started. We were in a little bit of a rush. I know going forward we're probably going to come up with a plan for that, but right now we have 2 bins in here. One is compost, so things like, this pea shell, some onion roots I have there. And eventually when that's full, it will make its way to the compost. And this is for weeds, which we do not compost. We used to in the past, but we don't anymore. It doesn't really make sense, right? I feel like as we've gotten older, our time is just too precious and we spend a lot of it weeding. So we are trying to minimize that. So we're headed into the greenhouse now, which has been a game changer this year. And this does have fabric cover, as you can see. We've got 8 beds in here, a few little various barrels, and a few little potters just along the side. This garden was started approximately 5.5 weeks ago. So you can see that things grow quick and fast here. We have a very short season and we have to make the most of it. So let's chat about our tomatoes first. There is a lot of different ways to care for them, and I'll just walk you through what I am doing to care for ours. So first and foremost, I get rid of a lot of the leaves on our tomato plants, and that's really for 2 reasons. One is good airflow, good circulation around the plant. We do a lot of overhead watering, and I just don't want anything fungal to start. And the second reason is because of energy. So anytime the plant is putting out a stalk or a leaf, there is energy in there, and I want it to kind of direct its energy on the fruiting vines and specifically ripening the fruit on the vine. With that short season, we don't really get enough time for our tomatoes to actually get to that real ripe state, and a lot of the times we have to ripen them indoors, which I would like to try to avoid. They're always better out here, more flavorful if we can get that process to happen in the greenhouse. So tomatoes will go wild if you let them. They will send out a bunch of suckers. Those suckers will turn into leaders, so you'll have multiple stalks on the plant, and each of those stalks will also send out more suckers or more growth points, and that just takes away more energy from the plant. So you've probably heard of pruning them. We like to prune them back to just a few liters, sometimes just 1 liter. A lot of these guys, I do actually have 2 main stalks, but I will go along and prune off all of these suckers, any sort of extra leaves. That's why they do look a little naked, especially at the bottom. But that way I can see the tomatoes and I can just overall check on the plants and see how they're doing. I was just in here recently, but it looks like I do need to get back in here and pull some more of those suckers off. It's our first year using the hooks and the twine. It has been awesome so far. The tomatoes don't actually want to crawl up it, so you do have to kind of convince them a little bit. You just got to twist them around every so often. That's a sucker there. Just break that off. The only time that can be kind of problematic is when we have more than 1 liter. So we have to either run another twine down or just find a way to stake that extra stalk. I don't know what's going on with our sunflowers this year. I kind of mixed them in with the beds and they're just going absolutely wild. This one in particular has like so many flowers forming. I don't feel like that's normal. Things are crammed in here too. We've got nasturtium, calendula, marigolds, chamomile, dill, all spread throughout. These are some sweet peas and they are so fragrant this year. I think they really like being in the greenhouse. We've already got tomatoes forming and we have a bunch of peppers that I've already set. We've been harvesting quite a bit actually. And you may already know that the majority of this garden, like 99.9%, is started from seed, but not some of those peppers because we had that mishap with the aphids and we decided to go to a nursery and purchase a bunch of them which I am glad that we did because now we have peppers. We've got a huge marigold right there. A lot of them are getting really big. I think it's just the warmth in here. I'm not sure that's normal. The nasturtium usually does get very big, so that's typical. We've got some runner beans taken off amidst all the other bean varieties that we have. And just a quick follow-up on our ladybugs. So we got ladybugs back when we first planted this garden, and I didn't really know how that was going to go or help out with the aphids. I think we got 2,000, and I estimate at least half of them survived. And I'm excited to report that that was overwhelmingly successful, and I've really been able to see that these past few weeks. I kind of thought maybe they would just fly away and take off, but a lot of them did stay here, and they did reciprocate and make babies, and there's a bunch of larvae in here now. I pretty much see them all the time. They're everywhere on everything, and they are also outside. So every time I'm watering, I see ladybugs or stages of ladybugs pretty much everywhere. And I'm no scientist, as you know, but the whole experience has given me a chance to learn a lot more about lady beetles or ladybugs. This is just a quick synopsis or my version of the stages of a ladybug. So two lady beetles get together on a hot day. The lady beetle goes off and lays eggs. The larvae hatch. They look like these pretty cool, like spiky dinosaurs. They're red and black. They can be gray, and those larvae are what are responsible for really doing the damage to the aphids. So they cruise around, they're actually really fast, and they eat a bunch of aphids. They live their life out. They have a few different transitions, or I guess we'll say like molts, where they morph into a bigger larva. And then from there, they find a spot to basically hunker down where they're going to go through that final transition. They molt again and turn into this little orange glob. That glob kind of hardens, and eventually a ladybug emerges. So I have yet to catch that actual part. I keep looking in here because there are quite literally thousands of them. It's almost like we have a ladybug infestation, but I have caught them just recently after emerging, and it's really cool. They're like a really light orange. They don't have spots. They look kind of soft, and they'll pretty much hang around the area, the same area, and grow their wings out, and then they finally go off, and the process just repeats itself. So I don't know if we just got really lucky with the ladybugs, but they're everywhere, and they've made a major dent on the aphid population in here. A few weeks back, I was using neem oil, probably like every other week. I only did it twice, and when I saw all the larvae, I pretty much decided that I can't do that anymore. I want to just let them do what they're supposed to do, and they did a remarkable job. When I go through and look at the plants that had just a crazy amount of aphids, I don't see any at all anymore. It's definitely something that we're going to do again in the future, and we're going to move onward with the tour. I think a change I'm going to make next year is putting our artichokes outside because they don't seem to be doing very much in here at all. And I may put the sunflowers in one area so they don't kind of like take over and shade out other plants. What I've actually been doing is coming along and I'll prune some of the lower leaves or the extra flowers because they're just so robust. This squash bed has impressed me. We only have about 3.5 foot trellising, and a lot of the squashes have definitely surpassed that. So squashes like to vine out, but they will trellis pretty easily or pretty readily. And we have these little clips, and I will just clamp them on, and once their little tendrils kind of form to the wire, I can take those clips off and reuse them. They're similar to the tomatoes where they'll send out like multiple vines, and because we have such a short growing season, I just keep them to one vine. I just want them to put their energy into that. If I got one squash off of each plant, I would be stoked. There are zucchinis and summer squashes mixed in. Those are doing fantastic. We have harvested a bunch of them. That's a nice yellow summer squash right there. Last year we didn't get enough of those. This year we are definitely getting a lot of them. Now we did specifically put this bed close to the roll-up sides for pollination. The summers are pretty hot here, so we generally have these sides rolled up and the door rolled up the majority of the day, and oftentimes I actually have them rolled up at night as well. Pollination has not been an issue. With our old greenhouse, we didn't have roll-up sides, and I remember with this winter squash specifically, I did have some pollination issues, but we have plenty of pollinators in here. In fact, I feel a little bit bad for them sometimes because they don't always always make it out. The greenhouse is a little bit of a death trap, you know, if they go up high. Sometimes they can't find their way out, which is a little bit sad. Pretty much all the other plants in here do not need pollination. They are self-pollinating or semi-self-pollinating, with the exception of the corn. Not every single squash sets, some of them don't, and that's okay. I just come along and pick them off. Like you can see this one right here, I think it's wrinkly. So it already lost the flower and it's wrinkly, meaning it didn't set. They'll get really big and you'll be able to tell. We've got another artichoke in here that is dwarfed by the sunflowers. This little guy hasn't sent me. I don't even know what he is. This space is reserved for the barrel stove, which is not quite, you know, installed in here yet. We've got bush beans, eggplants, cherry tomatoes, and sweet potatoes that have a little sheet of plastic. Those were something that were very infested with aphids, and they look so good now. They're really bushing out. We do already have some eggplants, which is exciting. This is a bed where I definitely need to manage the sunflowers because they're kind of crowding everything out. The corn is tasseling and pollinating these silks. Generally, the pollination is done by wind, which we do get a pretty good, you know, current coming through here, but I've actually been coming along and like shaking them to make sure that it actually pollinates all of those silks. On the ear of corn. Corn's tricky here to get the timing right. These did tassel out pretty early. They're not super tall, but that's not a problem. So we will see if all goes accordingly and we actually get some nice full ears of corn where each little kernel has been pollinated. The basil is abundant this year. We have been picking some pretty much every night for dinner, and I plan to make some more pesto soon. These are the rest of the tomatoes, and these are determinate, so they are quite a bit bushier, and I am doing less pruning on them. We've got our tomatillos or tomatillos back there. They have a lot of branches, so we've had to be creative with how we're stalking them. We're primarily using bamboo sticks and then the little hooks. The cucumbers are doing great this year. We haven't harvested too much because we're trying to let them get big, but I have been pruning them. I prune those lower leaves again to allow some good airflow, and it also makes it so you can actually see the cucumber, right? And we have some more basil here, and I don't want that to get crowded out. The twine system is working pretty well for the cucumbers, minus that we didn't do every single plant. So that's semi-problematic because they don't all have like a twine to go up, and they also do what some of the other plants in here do, where they send out branches off of these little nodes, and you end up with just a lot of leaves and vines going everywhere. And you can prune them, it just means less cucumbers, right? Or you're directing the energy back into the main vine. I just come along here every once in a while and kind of try to guide them up. We absolutely love snacking on cucumbers fresh, so I'm hoping that we have an abundance of them and we can actually make pickles too. We're out of our pickles. That pretty much completes the tour inside the greenhouse. Thank you guys so much for coming along. It has been very much a privilege of mine to share our garden with you. I'm very passionate about gardening and enjoy it. I'm sure there's going to be a few questions we didn't answer in this video, but I will try to just address two more that we get pretty frequently. The first and foremost is probably just acknowledging the size of the garden and asking if we sell produce or if any of the food that we are generating here is for income. And the answer is no. So this is a personal garden. You definitely could, with this size space, generate enough food to sell at a farmer's market or something like that, but you would need to have, you know, in-ground rows. You would really need to maximize it. Not exactly the way we have it, really spaced out. There's a lot of real estate and just open space for us to walk around and move equipment. We only get 90 days up here to grow our food for the year, and it's not just for this year. It usually carries forward to the next year with some of our preservation techniques. The best way I've actually heard this explained is if you were to gather all the food that you ate in a year and put it in a room, or, you know, put it on a table. It wouldn't fit on a table, right? You would really get an idea of how much food it is that you consume in a year. And it definitely seems like a lot because it is. There's these big plants. We do have an abundance, and I can definitely gift vegetables away. I mean, I always have extras. We do also feed the chickens a little bit with them, but for the most part, this is just our garden for us. We put a lot of time and energy into it, and is directly what we utilize for our food needs. Second question is regarding irrigation. So I do all of our watering by hand. I know that's a little bit unusual for the size of the garden, but I really enjoy that time out here with the plants. It does take hours. I don't always have to water all the time, but during heat waves like we've just had, I will spend a significant amount of my time out here, you know, watering all the plants. I will usually split it up in sections to make it more manageable, and I just absolutely love the time I get to spend out here looking at the plants, looking at the bugs. I'm big into insects, and I get to come out here and be out here when the light's like beautiful in the morning or at night. Like now, I'm guessing by the sun going down that it is well past 10:30, and it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely a space that I enjoy spending time in. I can do a little weeding while I'm at it. I can look at the plants and see how they're doing. I don't foresee myself switching over to any sort of like automated irrigation in the near future. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to leave it in the comments. We do go through those. And yeah, just thanks again for being a part of this journey. This whole thing has evolved more than we ever anticipated, and you guys have been a part of it. Needless to say, I think it's time I turn in, and we hope to be out here harvesting a bunch of food and bringing you along for it.